So translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's house. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. A purport by Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee of the Lord is never perturbed by an awkward position created by the external energy of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 3:27, it is said, Prakriti kriyamanani gunakarmani sarvasaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. Prabhupada doesn't put the translation in the purport, but I'll just read it. It's nice. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So we're going to find out this is the bewilderment of Duryodhana. He's bewildered. So this is a person, one person, we're going to see an amazing person, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness. They may be appearing to work on the same level, but there's a wide gulf of difference. So we're going to see someone in false ego and another person who actually sees things properly. And this is what happens to people that misuse the senses and sense gratification for a long time. They become bewildered by false ego and they forget the relationship with Krishna. So let's go on to the purport. A conditioned soul is absorbed in material existence under the influence of different modes of external energy. Absorbed in the false ego, he thinks that he is doing everything by himself. The external energy of the Lord, the material nature, is fully under the control of the Supreme Lord, and the conditioned soul is fully under the grip of the external energy. Therefore, the conditioned soul is fully under the control of the law of the Lord. But due to illusion only, he thinks himself independent in his activities. Duryodhana was acting under such influence of the external nature by which he would be vanquished at the ultimate end. Prabhupada continues the purport. He could not accept the sound advice of Vidura, but on the contrary, he insulted that great soul, who was the well-wisher of his whole family. Vidura could understand this, because he was a pure devotee of the Lord. In spite of being very strongly insulted by Duryodhana's words, Vidura could see that Duryodhana, under the influence of Maya, the external energy, was making progress on the path toward his own ruination. He therefore considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. Yet he also saw how the internal energy of the Lord helped him in that particular situation. This is interesting. A devotee is always in a renounced temperament, but because the worldly attractions can never satisfy him, Vidura was never attracted by the royal palace of his brother. So we know that he was insulted. You know, who asked you to come here? You know, you're just a son of a maidservant. Get out and take nothing but your breath. This is what Duryodhana said. So he didn't care about the palace. So Prabhupada continues the purport. He was always ready to leave the place and devote himself completely to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Now he got the opportunity by the grace of Duryodhana. This is interesting. He got the opportunity by the grace of Duryodhana. And instead of being sorry at the strong words of insult, he thanked him from within, because it gave him the chance to live alone in a holy place and fully engage in the devotional service of the Lord. The word gata vyata, without being sorry, is significant here because Vidura was relieved from the tribulations which trouble every man entangled in material activities. He therefore thought that there was no need to defend his brother with his bow. He's speaking about his brother Dhritarashtra, but because his brother was meant for ruination. Thus he left the palace before Duryodhana could act. Maya, the supreme energy of the Lord, acted here both internally and externally. This is interesting. Maya is acting internally and externally. So this is the end of the purport. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksusu Enmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upagadamayam Danti Slavadanti Kam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Binda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakopa Chubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So the verse again, thus being pierced by arrows through his ears. These arrows are the harsh words of Duryodhana. Get out. And afflicted to the core of his heart. It's not that he didn't have any feelings that actually afflicted him. So Vidura, he placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. This is nice. So here we see this is the palace of Dhritarashtra. This is where Vidura was. He came to try to give good advice, good counsel, but when you try to give good advice to someone who's envious and is a snake like Duryodhana, then things like this happen. It actually, let's see what happened here. Okay. Alright, so let's see. Discard change. Okay, let's try this. Something's happening here. Can you hear me still? Did I lose anybody?
No, you're fine.
This seems like my computer just kind of froze up. Actually, it crashed. I don't know what happened. You're still with me?
Yes, we see your desktop.
Let me just open up this again and see what happened. All right. Okay. Let's see. Let's open up the program again. We're on Canto 3, Chapter 1, text number 16. There it is. Okay, let's open it up. Maybe the internet got messed up here. Yeah, it should be good because I'm with you guys. So it's opening up here. So as it opens up, we can see this is it's such an incredible reaction that we're seeing from Vidura. It's amazing how we can learn so many things, and we'll bring this up if we can get this back up, how there's different reactions that we can have according to our particular consciousness or how we're particularly attached to certain things in the material world. So we'll see, and I'll bring up some examples and different things like that. So okay, so let's go here and let's try it again. Okay, can you see that? Vidura's brother's palace?
We see, but it looks like all we see is the balcony and a pot.
Oh, good. Yeah,
okay,
that's right. I just wanted to show that part. You know, we can see the palace. We're just kind of zooming in on a detail. And then we're going to just transpose it and see. This is actually what happened in that place. Nice palace, but Vidura was never attached. You know, after he was insulted, who asked you to come here? You're just a son of a kept maid servant. Kick him out. Just leave him with his breath only. And so he just left before he could actually do anything else. And he realized that his brother actually his fate was sealed pretty much. You can't protect him. So what can you do? Give a good advice to an envious snake? He just becomes more envious. It's very difficult to please. So he takes off, and he just goes where? He goes on pilgrimage to all the holy different places. And as we read, he was grateful for the blessings of Duryodhana. so that he could just go and be by himself and go to all the holy places. He's a very great soul. He was considering that, even though Krishna was on the planet, it's amazing that he decided to go for purification, go to pilgrimage, because he thought by associating with his brother and his family that he was contaminated, so he wanted to go and get purified instead of just approaching Krishna directly. So that's what he did. He actually went on pilgrimage for like 30 some years, probably like 35 years. And then through his travels, he met this great saint, Maitreya. And they discussed many topics on what? Many topics on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's so nice, when you meet a sadhu, everything, all problems, all these afflictions, everything just seems to go away, right? There's a story about a sadhu also. He was known as a problem solver. So, he was coming to the village and everybody was looking forward to that. So all these citizens, they had made lists of all their problems. So they're going to present them to the sadhu and he can solve these problems. So when the sadhu came, he sat down and he said, let's sing, let's have a kirtan. So they started chanting, and eventually it got into more energy, and then they started to dance, and everybody was really ecstatic and happy dancing. And then it came to an end, and he sat down again and he said, one sentence, I think I've answered all your questions. Yes? And everybody agreed. So this is the association of a sadhu, a pure devotee, a spiritual master, someone like Maitreya. We have no problems. But we have to actually come to this plane always. We have to keep ourselves in that plane. Sometimes we have the association of a pure devotee, comes to town, we're all excited, we're all ecstatic, we're, feel Krishna conscious. But then after he goes, then what happens? Our problems come back. But we should realize that in Krishna consciousness, there's not really any problems. Our problem is simply how to accept Krishna. How to remain on this platform of Krishna consciousness is our work as devotees. Not that we go on a roller coaster. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're depressed, But we have to keep this negativity out of our mind. Just focus on Krishna. Don't focus on the problems. That's what we have to do. So the greatest mistake that the conditioned souls make is to expect happiness at a place which is described by the Lord as being miserable. It's in the Bhagavad Gita, Dukhalayam asasvatam. So it's miserable and it's temporary. But yet in conditioned souls, we think that, we want to be happy, right? Everybody wants to be happy, joyful. It's natural to want that. It's actually our birthright to be happy. But this material world, you have to understand, it's temporary. It's just like this drop of water on the leaf of a flower. Any little agitation, any slight wind, anything, and it's gone. And this is what we do. We're in this material world, this temporary place, and what are we doing? We're making so many arrangements for being happy here. And what are all these arrangements that we're making? We build beautiful cities, beautiful buildings, very colorful, very comfortable, kind of like Beverly Hills almost here. It's very nice. Have you ever been to some of these homes? It's amazing. And the views are just spectacular. These are all sitting on a lotus petal. They're like drops. So we're trying to make so many arrangements, yet what happens? As indicated here, just around the corner, just over the hill, there's misery coming. So we want happiness, but yet why is it we see misery? Or we may see a little happiness, but it's temporary, then it's gone. Again, it's like that drop of water on the leaf. It's flickering. So Krishna describes himself that this material world is dukhalayam asasvatam. It's a temporary place of misery. We can't stay here. Even if we want to make a compromise and say, okay, I can deal with this misery. then it's okay, I'll stay. I actually met a person that was like that. He was into witchcraft. And I was asking him about all these things. Aren't you afraid of the reactions and stuff? And he goes, yeah, before you do a thing, you have to realize that, is this the kind of, can I deal with that reaction? I mean, they know they're going to get a reaction. So they deliberately do something harmful to somebody, and yet they know they're going to get a reaction. And they say, oh, I can live with that. I don't mind that. It's okay, as long as I get what I want. So even though you may want to become, have like a compromise with the material world, oh yeah, it's okay, be miserable, but but still, even though you want to be here, you can't stay here. You're going to be kicked out, just like Vidura was kicked out. You think it's such a nice place, but yet you don't know what's going to happen. Someone's going to kick you out. Something's going to happen. So this is what happens. As soon as we get this body, the human body, then what follows it is the suffering. So this is that nice verse in the Bhagavad Gita Prabhu's quoting from Sri Kalayama Sasvatam. Is that after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So since it's full of miseries, since it's full of birth, old age, disease, and death, so we want to naturally achieve something that's the opposite of that, something that's perfect, there's a supreme place to go, a planet. It's called Krishna Loka. And that's Goloka Vrindavan. That's where we will not return from. And we get these messages from great souls, Mahatmas like Vidura, like Maitreya. They receive these transcendental messages from self-realized devotees like Srila Prabhupada. And then we gradually develop our Krishna consciousness. And then we become absorbed in Krishna service. And then we won't desire to be elevated to these drops. Maybe on a higher leaf, maybe higher up the hill, maybe closer to the fire, or maybe higher planetary systems. Still, it's all temporary. But the devotees, they just want to be engaged in Krishna's service. And they just want Krishna's association and the devotees' association, that's all. So here we are, these bodies, they're like vehicles bound to be crashed. Baba says, whenever there is some crash, whether it's a railway or an airplane, it should be noted that all these passengers are destined to die by the will of God. And they come together and they're killed. Actually, it's described how without the sanction, without the will of God, nothing can take place. So we may think, oh, that's a very unkind God. It's a cruel God. It's like a father. How can he deny so many things to us, to our children? Is he actually unkind? So sometimes devotees even are suffering worse conditions. But how do they feel? The devotee's feeling compared to other feelings, and we'll go into those. Devotees, he's actually feeling obliged to God. That's a devotee. He's suffering, and he's taken it as the greatest mercy of God. This is actually a secret. We'll talk about that more. So Prabhupada quotes that one sloka, tate nukampam, that if we just simply tolerate this and keep going on, even though we do our simple activities, if we just tolerate and we go on, then we will actually gain the result, which we'll describe. So here we are. We're on the board of ship of the body. That's what happens. It's bound to sink. No matter what kind of body you have. The great demigod body, a great athlete body, whatever you have. This represents the biggest body, which they thought would never sink, the Titanic. And so many stories around this Titanic. I gave a class the other day here, and I mentioned the story about there's a family that actually was saving up their money. They're working very honestly, and they wanted to go to America. But a week before, their child got bit by a dog. And he either got rabies or they were afraid he might have rabies, so they didn't let him go on the boat. So they were left behind. And he was cursing God. He became angry. This is another reaction. People, they're working so hard to achieve some goal here, and this drop. And yet, what happened? It's messed up. So they become angry at their father. They become angry at God, and they curse God. So he would go to church and actually do this openly. And then after about a week, he comes back to church, and he's actually begging for forgiveness. And thank you, God, for saving my family. Thank you, thank you. Because he heard about how it happened, is that the Titanic sunk. So sometimes we don't know the purpose behind God's. There's some tragic and like that. And then there's a devotee came up to me, who was visiting LA, and she said, actually, the same thing happened in her family. There was someone related to her that had a ticket. It was a cheap ticket to go on this exact boat. But yet, because the rich people, they were given priority. So the rich people took her spot and they bumped her. So she was bumped off, and she was saved. So she said that was actually related to her. That's a devotee that was visiting. Just happened. So there's so many stories like this that we don't understand the hand of God when it happens to us. But yet there's some purpose. There's some reason for it. You know, the body's afflicted with so many diseases even. You ever heard of this disease, progeria? It's like a disease you get. It's genetic. There's actually no cure. And when you're a very, very young age, you begin to age very rapidly. And there's, you know, it's kind of a rare disease, but usually in 90% of the cases, the victim dies due to some kind of attack or stroke. So there was this person, he was a rabbi, and his name was Harold Kushner. You might have heard of him. And this is what happened to his son. His son actually died at a very young age. And what was his reaction? He wrote a book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. So he did this in honor of his son, his young son. He died when he was 14 years old with this incurable disease, progeria. So he wrote this book. And this is a good example of somebody who's just harboring on the suffering, on the problem, on the mountain, on being afflicted. He just harbors on it. So he writes a book about it, and he begins to challenge God. You know, they say that you're omnipresent. But if you're omnipresent, then why weren't you here when my son died? Or maybe you are omnipresent, but maybe you're supposedly supposed to be omnipotent. But weren't you powerful enough to save my son? Or were you too busy doing something else? Or maybe you have these two qualities, omnipresent, omnipotency, but yet they say you're omnipresent. Maybe you were doing something. You were somewhere else and you didn't see him. So you're not omniscient. So maybe there isn't a God. So maybe even if you have all these qualities, you're unmerciful. So this is how he lost faith in his Lord. So this is sometimes we have to actually, there's something wrong with us. We need to correct ourselves. We don't want to suffer. But sometimes we don't want to give up the suffering. We don't want to give up the thought patterns attached to that suffering. It's almost like a child. You know, some little thing happens and he starts crying and bawling, you know, to his mother. Ah! You know, and there's just a little thing. It's like, you know, maybe he bumped his finger and you just blow on the finger. And then, you know, okay, you're fine. He just wants attention, you see. So we don't want to hold on to these sufferings. We want to let them go. Not, you know, become so absorbed. We write books against God. We do so many different things. Prabhupada actually writes that we shouldn't be attached to this mundane happiness. And he also says this mundane distress. So we can be attached to happiness or distress in this mundane world. And this is what this is a good example is here of this personality. Let's see. Anyway, I can't see here what's going on. It didn't crash again. Okay, so let's go on. Oh, it's still working. Okay, so here is another personality. Similar situation. His son also died of a disease, and it was cholera. Very, you know, deadly disease. So this gentleman, who was he? Someone of you may recognize him. It's none other than our Charles Darwin. He was also a Christian. And here again we see sometimes we don't want to correct ourselves or our understanding, but we don't want to give up the suffering. So we come up with some theory and become atheistic and try to see that there's no God. We've actually just evolved. And you have to adapt to your, somehow or another you have to adapt to your surroundings, and then you will go on and live, so many ways. So anyway, this is another mundane example, someone attached to mundane distress. And here's also a famous personality. It doesn't matter what kind of body you're in, how big you are, what a great champion you are. This is one of the famous, probably the most famous tennis player that ever lived. And he died of AIDS, actually. And he actually had a blood transfusion, and he got it from that blood transfusion. So when he was in his deathbed, he actually was getting some mail from his fans, and he got this one letter from one of his fans. This is author Ash, by the way. And his fan said, "Why is it that you are selected to suffer like this and die? I mean, you're such a great personality. Why wasn't someone like, somebody that's useless, these bums or somebody like that, why doesn't God take them? Why are you taken instead of those or somebody else? Why is it you?" And then he actually Arthur wrote back to his fan and said, this is the way I see it. There's 5 million people out there that play tennis. But yeah, there's, maybe you could say, 1 million people that got a clue how to play tennis. And then out of those that have a clue, maybe there's 50,000 that actually can play like a pro, or play very expertly. And then out of those 50,000, maybe there's only 5,000 that actually are able to enter into the Grand Slam tournaments. And yet, out of those 5,000, there's only 50 that are selected to do the greatest, one of the Wimbledon competition. And then out of those 50, maybe 4 are only selected in the semifinals. And then out of those 4, 1 wins. It ends up with 2, and then there's 1. And then he said, why don't you ask why I was selected out of all these 5 million people to win? And he actually admitted that it is my mistake that I got this disease. We take credit for what we do good, but we curse God when something bad happens to us. So now we're starting to get into the right mentality here, about taking responsibility for ourselves and not blaming God. This is a very good, it's nice, actually, but still there's more. So here we are in the material world. It's a very dark place. But yet, look what we see here, the glittering attraction of Maya. Prabhupada mentions Maya in the purple. So Maya draws us to seek happiness in this material world. And she has 2 faces. And the conditioned soul, they see this face of material attraction. It's very flashing, it's very flickering, it's very attractive. So she's got very nice makeup on her face, and she instills material desires in the heart. So this is one face of Maya. And there's another face of Maya. This is Mahamaya. There's another Maya, it's called Yoga Maya. And she pulls us back to Krishna. So which one do you want? Mahamaya or Yoga Maya? So this is the illusory attraction in the material world that the conditioned souls experience. And it's described here to be like invisible iron chains around your neck. What is that invisible chain? That's the chain of desire. It draws us to so many things. We want this, we want that, the glitter, the attractiveness. The little drop of water is so attractive, and we want it, we want to live in there. But we don't realize that that's so insignificant, and it's bound to fall. So this desire has drawn us into this body, and it's chained by the neck if we're conditioned. And we're being drawn like this from time immemorial. So there's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a very nice prayer. He's actually praying to Yoga Maya. And he sees this Maya, and there's a nice song. I don't know, maybe Jaitananda knows this song, but I won't sing it, but I'll just read the translation. There's 9 verses, and it's very nice. And it says, the likes of such a lowly soul as me is not to be found anywhere in this world. Thus I have become most agitated due to falling into this vast ocean of material existence. Let's see if we could get this thing. It's not showing. I can actually see the whole thing. I can't see the whole thing here. So anyway, let's see if I can get this to work here. Oops, it's going to the next one. Let's go back. All right, let me see here. So here's the song. O Yogamaya, when will you show mercy to me by lifting up the curtain of illusion with which you shroud the universe in your external form of Mahamaya? You are known as Kula Devi, the traditional worshipable goddess of all the Vaishnavas dynasties. It's interesting how he says the shroud. You're covered with the shroud. Shroud is used, it's like the term used when they wrap up the dead body in a cloth. So that's basically what we are, like dead bodies here in the material world. And he goes on, I have heard your glories and activities from the Vedic literatures. You take all those souls who are averse to Krishna and bind them within the material world. To that person whose good fortune gradually dawns, allowing him to again become favorably disposed to Krishna, you award liberation and make him free from all grief and fear. So he's praying to her now. Oh, my dear mother, showing your causeless mercy to the servant, give me a place in Vrindavan, for you are Yogamaya herself, the internal energy of yoga, or union. Without complying with you, no soul at any time can get Krishna, for the manifestation of Krishna's pastimes is all enacted only by your mercy. You are the devoted follower of Lord Krishna, and you are the mother of the universe. You have shown me the transcendental touchstone of Krishna consciousness. My dear mother, I sincerely wish that you will let my faith in the Vaishnavas increase at every moment. Without the lotus feet of the devotees of the Lord, Bhaktivinoda is not able to cross to the other side of this ocean of material existence. So that's from his Kalyana Kalpataru of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So it's very nice. He's praying like that. So we can see we're in the material world, we're sleeping very nicely, and then all of a sudden we wake up and the house is on fire. This is the material world. But by the mercy of the devotees, we can see in this particular pastime, when the Pandavas are about to be burned, by the mercy of the pure devotee, they were saved. By the intelligence of the devotee, they were saved. So this is Bhaktivinoda sincerely, he's praying to his mother, I sincerely wish that we let my faith in the Vaishnavas increase at every moment. Because without the lotus feet of the devotees of the Lord, I'm not able to cross over to the other side of material existence. What is that material existence? Is that flame, is the burning of the material world, is all these mountains of problems, these afflictions that we feel. So as we go on, we can see there's nice, in our tradition we can see, and in the Vedic culture it's described, great personalities' intake and great personalities' understanding of problems. Even though the bull we see here, the personality of religion, and the cow, the personality of earth, they knew perfectly well that Kali was the direct cause of their suffering. But when they were asked by the king, who did this to you? They started to explain how, they weren't sure. They didn't identify with the mischief mongers. They didn't accuse them of suffering inflicted. But they took it for granted that the mischief monger is made to act by some indirect cause. And therefore they tolerate suffering, and they think them as God-given. Just small doses that I'm suffering. Otherwise, I should have been suffering greater. And here we have a great devotee, Prahlad Maharaj. He didn't even notice the afflictions, the sufferings. He's so advanced devotee. So Prabhupada wanted us to become advanced devotees so that we can understand Krishna's direction of how things are going on. So Prabhupada explains to us in his books that, and he says that Krishna tells us that don't think that things are going on automatically. But they're actually happening by the direction of Krishna. Even if you're in an adverse condition, the devotee, he doesn't feel pain. He knows that this is actually the direction of Krishna. And I'm just fully surrendered to Krishna. Why shall I take this in an adverse condition? It's actually the mercy of Krishna. And that's that, again, back to that verse, Tatteno kampam susamiksamano. That a devotee is not disturbed in any adverse condition. He thinks of it as actually a gift from Krishna. And then when we think like this, then actually we can go back home, back to God. Muktipada Sadaivank. So this is, now we should think that this is Krishna's mercy, actually. Another, talk about affliction, being afflicted, being harassed, being embarrassed and ashamed, just completely humiliated in the mature world. This is a great personality we see, Draupadi. When she was just focusing on her sari, not focusing on Krishna, she was about to lose it. But she gave up focusing on the problem, gave it up, wasn't attached, but just simply depended on Krishna. And Krishna supplied everything. Krishna is looking for that. He just wants us to focus on Him and forget. Don't get attached to the miseries here in the mature world. We can see also, even though in spite of Arjuna's conviction that he would not fight, still Krishna insisted. He said, your mercy on them will not act, because it's already my plan that they will have to die. So you becoming kind, it can't surpass my plan. So sometimes we think, we could make special arrangements, But anyway, this is Krishna's mercy. Partriyana, where's that verse go? Paratrayanaya Saranam Visanaya Chaduskritam. That's his mission, is to save the devotees and annihilate the non-devotees. So here, Krishna again, I brought them all together in this battlefield, and they'll all be finished. Nobody's going home. You just be the instrument. You either kill them, or they're already going to be dead by my arrangement. Another great personality we know Dhruva Maharaj. He was fighting the demons. And what were they doing? They were talk about afflictions and mountains, actual literally mountains of problems coming at him, raining from the sky. Oceans, mountains, weapons, animals, dead bodies, and all kinds of obnoxious things. And what did Dhruva Maharaj do? He took a special arrow, and he didn't focus on the problems. What did he do? He empowered that arrow with a special mantra. That's the mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So he spoke light into the darkness of ignorance there. He spoke. This is how he empowered his arrow with the mantra. It's like you speak. He spoke to them by chanting Hare Krishna. That's how we speak to our mountains. We don't speak to God, oh God, my problems are so big, my challenges, my trials are so big, I can't handle them. But no, we have to speak to our mountains about how big our God is. And how do we speak to our mountains? Again, the Hare Krishna mantra. That's the best weapon. Actually, it releases the power of the spiritual world. And there's another great devotee. How does she see devotees? How does she see problems and calamities? She can't be imitated, but she's praying for calamities. See, this is the highest. She prays for them, because she knows that when I have calamities, it's an opportunity to remember you. You have to be very advanced to pray like this. So here we are. We're in this samsara davana. We say that daily in the morning. This Davana is explained with this visual here that, nobody goes to the forest to set a fire, but yet, this sometimes, as we saw, the hill started on fire. It may be in the forest, it may be in the city. Nobody wants to set fire. But it's explained that this fire comes. The friction just of the bamboos and the trees or whatever it is. You know, it causes fire. So this material world also is compared to this davanala, samsara davanala. Nobody wants to have trouble here. You see, we want to make a nice place, a nice home here, but it goes wrong. Our expectations are rewarded with what? Misery. So what happens? We become depressed. All our expectations are cruelly crushed, cruelly destroyed. This is the nature of the material world. It's guaranteed to be like this. This is what happens. In the forest, there's many creatures. Some of the creatures can get away because they have legs or wings, they can fly away. But what happens to the snakes? They are the first to suffer. They're the first to go. Because they're in the ground where the dry leaves are, and the fire quickly comes. And they can't fly away like the other animals. So therefore they get burned up. So Prabhu describes how, similarly, in this catastrophe of the world, the persons like snakes, cruel, envious people, they suffer first, like the snakes do. And that's how Chanukapana actually says that there's two envious living entities, very dangerous. One is the snake, and the other is a man whose habit is like a snake. Without any fault, he'll bite you. And this is what Vidura was. He was without fault. And that's what Duryodhana did. Even though he didn't have any fault, he just, bit him, kicked him out. He pierced his, with harsh words in this way. So it's very, bad. So this is what we have to do. Even though, people have so many, they're actually faultless, like Vidura. The snake will bite them. You come by and then they just bite you. So they couldn't fly away, they're burned up in the forest. So other animals you can see, they go for shelter, the water, but actually nobody escapes the material world. So the body, we may think the animals, but no, we're actually on 4 legs, 4 wheels. Prabhupada says 4 legs or 4 tires. What's the difference? If you're in this material world trying to enjoy it, there's nothing that will happen. So there's a secret in spiritual life. How can we see crisis and remember Krishna? How is that? If we actually understood this properly, our whole life can be turned around, can be turned in an entirely different direction. Just like there's a nice purport in I think it's in the 10th canto or 11th canto. Yeah, it's the 10th canto, where they're quoting some of the acharyas, and they're saying how the beloved devotees of the Lord do not regard as very troublesome the sufferings he imposes on them. Indeed, they find that in the end it gives rise to unlimited pleasure. Just as the stinging ointment applied by a physician cures the patient's infected eye. In addition, suffering helps protect the confidentiality of devotional service by discouraging intrusions by the faithless, and it also increases the eagerness with which the devotees call upon the Lord to appear. If the devotees of Lord Vishnu were complacently happy all the time, he would never have a reason to appear in this world as Krishna, Ramchandra, Nrsimha, and so on. So that's again that verse, Pratriyanaya Sadhana, to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants. So here we are. Samsaradavan and Liloka. So there's, you may think you're living in the city, avoid the forest fires, but no, there's also by electricity fires started. New York City, there's great fires in great cities. We saw on the hill big fire brigades. But just like in the forest or even in the city, you can't bring your fire brigade. How is it possible? You can't go there to help the animals. You can't help the people with your bucketfuls of water, your little hose. It's not possible. You can't extinguish this samsaradhavana. So look at that. It could be thousands of feet high. How are you going to extinguish that? It's only one way. By the clouds of mercy in the sky. This rainfall, only that way it's possible. So similarly, just like there's clouds in the sky, there's this cloud. It's called Karunya. Karunya Ganan Ganan Vitam. So just like an ordinary cloud, it's made possible by the evaporating water from the sea. So similarly, Krishna, he has that sea of mercy. Karunaya Maya. Karunaya Sagara. So Krishna, that's another name of Krishna. It's Karunaya Sagara. So just as the air is evaporating, or the heat evaporates from the sea, the clouds are formed in the sky. So similarly, one who has connection or the power to evaporate the mercy of the sea of Krishna, he can extinguish the samsara davana. And who is that? That's the Guru. Guru is the cloud. Is the agent of drawing water from the ocean of mercy of Krishna. And he can turn that mercy cloud and pour it on the samsara davana. And then it's extinguished. Samsara davana nalinanuka jannayaka. So this is what happens. So Srila Vishnava Thakur, also in the same purport to the 10th canto, in the 88th chapter, it's very nice. And in the purport, Srila Vishnava Thakur gives a possible objection. So what fault would there be in God's incarnating for some other reason than to deliver saintly persons from suffering? So the learned Acharya responds, yes, my dear brother, this makes good sense, but you're not expert in understanding spiritual moods. So here, this is another example of how we understand this suffering. If we could just understand this, we could turn our life around. So he says, please listen. It is at night that the sunrise becomes attractive. So you can see the guy sees the sunrise coming over the clouds in the mountains there. During the hot summer, that the cold water gives comfort. And during the cold winter months, that warm water is pleasing. Lamplight appears attractive in darkness, not in the glaring light of the day. That's how attractive the camp light looks in the darkness. And when one is distressed by hunger, food tastes especially good. So he goes on. In other words, to strengthen his devotee's mood of dependence on him and longing for him, the Lord arranges for his devotees to go through some suffering, and he appears in order to deliver them. Their gratitude and transcendental pleasure are boundless. Isn't this amazing? What a great understanding that we're given through Srila Prabhupada's books. So nice. So here, look at this mess. This is what our life is sometimes. It's very problematic, and it looks like a big mess. So there was a nice devotee, but he had a very problematic life. But at the end, he actually met the Lord. And he was with the Lord, and he actually challenged the Lord. He said, why have you caused me so much troubles? And the Lord said, do you remember when you were young, your mother was embroidering a beautiful design on a cloth? And from your level, you were looking from underneath, you were on the floor, she was on her lap, and you're looking up, and she said, he asked her what she's doing, and she said, oh, I'm making a very beautiful design. He said, oh, that doesn't look beautiful to me, that looks pretty messy. And so he said, no, just go play, and we'll see it after a while, come back. So he comes back a second time, and it looks even more messy than the first time. And she says, oh, I'm not finished yet, just go back, and then come back, and I'll show you the finished product. So he comes back eventually, and then she says, okay, come on my lap. So he comes on the lap, and he sees this very beautiful thing that she made, a very beautiful design. And then she showed you the finished work of art. So Krishna is telling this devotee, so similarly, I was also embroidering your life. You see, you were thinking it was a mess. But now I want you to come on my lap and see how all these problems, look at this problem. If this one had happened, then you wouldn't have got this result. And see how I helped you here? By this you understood this, and that, and it went on and see. So he says, you see, ultimately from my point of view, it was perfect. So we have to get the point of view of Krishna. And this we can understand through the Bhagavatam and through the great devotees. I heard this story from a devotee. It was about this devotee named Balaji in Vrindavan. I don't know if he's still there or if he lived there, if it's a true story. I think it's a true story. But anyway, this Balaji, I found this, it kind of related to a story. This is not him. I don't know, I just took this from the internet. But anyway, he used to worship his Radha Krishna deities by offering them a cloth. But it was a new cloth every day. Not only that, he would sew a new cloth every day. So many devotees would see, he's a poor devotee, he's a nice devotee. So they would give him different cloth to make this, for his deity. So one day a wealthy merchant saw him and he also decided to donate. But then he asked the man, he said, you give your deity so much enjoyment, so many nice clothes, but look at you. You're so poor. You don't even have proper clothing. Look at the holes in your socks and your dhoti. It's all dirty and your sweater's torn. And he said, why is it that your Lord is not reciprocating with you? So the Balaji, the saintly devotee said, he said, you see, I'm sticking the cloth as I'm embroidering and sewing. I'm sticking the cloth. I'm using a needle and a thread. And from the external point of view, it appears that I'm poking and piercing the cloth and even tearing the cloth and causing pain to the cloth. But behind the needle is the thread, and it makes the cloth very beautiful. So he said, the same thing, the Lord is giving trouble in my life, this trouble of poverty. But I'm not complaining about my problems, because behind the problems is the merciful thread of the Lord. He says, even though my cloth is in bad condition, my heart is stitched with the mercy and protection of the Lord. I don't care about the external view. If my heart is grateful to the Lord, I don't need anything else. So just see this vision, how by his devotional service, he was given such deep insight. And this is the insight Vidura had. He can see Maya acting externally and internally. So he saw the whole thing. So that's the inner landscape and the outer landscape. So this faith, we can see, we have to have this faith in Krishna, as we mentioned earlier. But it's not going to change. We may think, we expect it to change the outer circumstances of our life. It may not, but one thing's for sure, it will change the inner landscape, like it did for this devotee here. And one said, if the inner landscape is changed, what does it matter what's happening outside? It doesn't matter what's going on outside. So sometimes these things come, like a thunderbolt. It wakes us up from our comfort zone, shakes us up, and reminds us that this is not our home, that we should go back home. It's like this, the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the analogy that the souls in the mature world, we become so involved in our erroneous ways that it's as if our hearts have become buried in a gloomy mountain of sinful desire. But the lotus feet of the Lord, they're like brilliant thunderbolts, and they can shatter these mountains and illuminate our true consciousness. So that's a nice analogy that's given even in the life of the Bhagavad, how the devotees are, how they become, they're like mountains. They're actually being struck by torrents of rain in a rainy season, but they're not shaken. And just as those whose hearts are dedicated to the transcendental personality of Godhead are never disturbed, even when harassed by great misfortune. So we see here, Krishna, he's a lifter of Govardhan Hill. He's just a boy, maybe 5, 7 years old, and he holds this hill for 7 days. So, this is our Lord. Just see, by the law of gravity, the law of God, the will of God, he can do anything. And just imagine, what to speak of this hill, how much does planet Earth weigh? And it's floating in so-called thin air. And there's millions of those floating. So he's the supreme personality of Godhead. So if we rely on him and don't rely on ourselves, like Duryodhana is relying on himself, he thinks he's so powerful and so strong. then we would limit a world of possibilities that are available to us. And what is that connects us to this? Is that faith. It connects us to the maker of these mountains, the lifter of these mountains, the controller of these mountains. And it's that faith that moves Krishna to speak our favor, to send us many things in our way, blessings and so many things. So we have to declare victory over our own life. And then Krishna will turn these so-called mountains into just little molehills. So instead of speaking about our mountains, we speak to the mountains about the greatness of our God. And don't speak about what to speak about mountains. Look here, just see. So these are mountains, we think. They're trials, they're tribulations, they're challenges, they're afflictions. They're there. Look at our Lord. We have to speak about the greatness of our Lord. There's another story I heard. It's nice about a boy. He had a baby. I mean, there was a man. He had a baby. I was going to say baby instead of boy. But there was a baby in a sandbox. And there was a boulder in the sandbox. And the little kid was trying to, all his might to get it out. So he would push it and pull it and use all the strength of his legs and his arms and then pull it. And then he came up against the edge of the sandbox. And he just tried as much as he could to lift it and everything, but he couldn't do it. Maybe just budge a little, but then it would fall on his finger, and then he'd cry. And then all of a sudden, there was a shadow that came over him. It was his father. And his father said, "What's happening?" He goes, "I'm trying to move this boulder. It's in my sandbox." And he said, you didn't use all the resources you had?" He said, "Yes, I did. I used all my might, all my strength." And he said, "No, you didn't." He said, "You didn't use me. You didn't ask me." So we can see Krishna is like that. He can do anything. We are so tiny. We're so insignificant. So this is Krishna. Just from the word Om, he creates everything. This is how powerful Krishna is. So that's the way to speak to your mountains, these mantras. Hare Krishna mantra. It's the best weapon. And it releases the power of the spiritual world. So in the midst of the thunder in the cloudy sky, there appears a rainbow that has no string. And its appearance is compared to the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his servants in the midst of the material atmosphere. So this is Krishna. When he appears, he's unaffected. He's like a stringless bow without the modes of the material nature. He has nothing to do with that. And similarly, also the devotee, the representative of Krishna, he also appears to rain the mercy, the cloud mercy. And he's also like a rainbow that appears very attractively and comes and delivers. So here we are, there's the devotees, there's the demons in the material world, but Bhakti Yoga is so powerful that both the demons and the devotees, they can derive benefit simply by thinking of Krishna. And this is how Krishna appears. And if we take advantage, like declaring, here's the person, he's got two sides, he can go one way or the other. So we have to declare ourselves, we have to declare victory over our own life. And then Krishna, again, will turn those so-called mountains, those afflictions, those problems into molehills. So this is Krishna consciousness. It's actually the highest form of thought.
Can you pause for a moment, Prabhu?
Sure. Oh, it's going past time.
The only reason I'm asking is I get some chat here saying people can't hear. I'm going to unmute everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there a problem with the sound? Because I can hear him clear, no problem. Anybody else have a problem?
Maybe their volume went down. But I'll try to speak a little louder just in case.
Okay, I heard it all right.
Fine, okay.
Thank you.
What's the first line of that Bhaktivinoda Thakur song?
Of the one, well, I'll go back.
It's really clear.
Let's go back to that and we'll hear that. Let me just finish here. We're talking about the highest form of thought is Krishna consciousness. And that we get by chanting the Krishna mantra. So it doesn't matter if you're an enemy of Krishna, if you're a demon, Or if you're a devotee, if we think of Krishna, we'll be cleansed of all our sins. And this is what happens. Krishna actually appears. And if we remember Krishna, he can purify us like the sun. And it's reviving what's already within us. So when we chant, God actually, we get his attention. And he releases all this healing, this favor, the victory actually comes in our direction. So here, we probably mentioned this meditation and how if we remember Krishna, purifies like the sun. It's already within us. So our only business is that we remember Krishna. So how can we do that? It's described in the Bhagavad Gita simply by drinking water. You can see how refreshing water is. You know, you splash it in your face, you drink some. You just remember this is Krishna. So in that way you can think, that's Krishna. Wherever there's land, there's Krishna. So what's the difficulty? Simply by drinking water. Or if you see a nice flower, you smell it, and then Krishna says, oh, I'm the fragrance of that flower. You can remember Krishna. So any part of the world, wherever you are, you can think of Krishna. And in that way we become purified. You know, on the taste in water, on the scent of the flower, you know, on the light of the sun, like this, in so many ways. You can be thinking of Krishna. And this is Srila Prabhupada, and he has come. He's not an ordinary cloud. He has come. He knows how to evaporate that mercy of Krishna. He has connection with the power to evaporate that, and that is Guru. Is the special mercy. This is where Prabhupada has come. So we have to actually, we can't just like think, oh, I can approach the Vedas and then I'll pick up Krishna. No, we can't do that. It's actually not possible. But if you go to Krishna's favorite person, Kintu Prabhoya Priya Eva Tasha, Krishna's very dear servant, confidential servant, if you go to that Guru, then you can understand Krishna. And this is what he comes. He's a preacher. He comes amongst this forest and he experiences suffering himself. We've seen so many devotees have come. Jesus Christ, what fault did he have? And he was crucified. Even Nityananda Prabhu, he came. What fault did he have? He was preaching and he got bloody in the head. So Srila Prabhupada came. He had so many sufferings. He had a heart attack, suffered so many things. And even devotees would see a picture of Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, you don't look happy. You look like you're not well. And Prabhupada says, no, I was in transcendental ecstasy. So this is Prabhupada. So, you know, the devotees have no danger. And they're confident that Krishna protects them in all dangers. But his only unhappiness is for the Jagais and Malais, the people of the material world. So therefore, these are powerful agents of representatives of Krishna. They bring us this lotus feet, which are like the thunderbolts, as we mentioned. They're brilliant thunderbolts, and they can shatter the mountains and illuminate our true consciousness. That's Krishna. So this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we can actually have a relationship with him. You know, within the material world, the conditioned souls are considering the heavenly planets, the celestial pleasures, you know, pious enjoyment of beautiful women. We saw Maya and all her makeup. We think these are desirable things. But actually, and then we consider things that are painful, things that are miserable to be evil. But this is the wrong perception of good and bad. Actually, everything in the material world is bad. It's described good and bad. It's all bad. But if we know the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the actual controller of everything, and that he's moving everything, then we can free ourselves from the bondage of this material existence. And we can actually go to the abode of the Supreme Lord. And we can be in touch with Krishna like that. So it's not ended here. There's one more slide coming up. And this is it here. So we see first the soul, he has covered consciousness, is in this shroud of Maya. And then somehow or another, by the mercy of the devotee, he gets this budding consciousness.
We have your first screen. We just have your desktop with Radha Krishna.
That's the right one. Yeah, that's the one I want. And this is Krishna. And yeah, so we have this budding consciousness, then it blossoms, and then it fully blossoms into Krishna consciousness. And then all the while we're going through this process, by following the orders, the instructions given by the great devotees, then it's a gradual expansion of bliss. And it's all in relationship with the Lord. And that's how we see everything. Fruits, flowers, plants, trees, everything. We see it actually in relationship with Krishna. That's what it says in Ishopanishad. Ishavashamidam sarvam. Everything animate or inanimate is within the universe is owned and controlled by the Lord. So if we see Krishna everywhere, in everything, that's the final word of self-realization. So all our activities, everything we do, all our thoughts, everything, we just offer them to Krishna. Those are the two things that are really indispensable for acquiring this vision. First we must offer the results of our activities to Krishna. Everything that we do is for Krishna. And then second, again, I mentioned again, every action we perform must be done exclusively in devotional service, as devotional service. So we must constantly meditate on that fact, that Krishna is what? The only enjoyer, is the proprietor of everything. And that's described in the Bhagavad Gita, that he's the only enjoyer, he's the master of all sacrifices. And if we don't recognize his true transcendental nature, then we fall down. So therefore, whatever we do, whatever we eat, whatever you offer, give away, whatever austerities you perform, then do that as an offering to Krishna. That's in the Bhagavad Gita. So thank you very much. I didn't realize, I just got so absorbed that it's extended class today, but please forgive me, and maybe we can open it up for some realizations or questions.
Guruji, who painted the painting that you started with and ended with of Vrindavan?
Started with and ended with? Oh, this one here, you mean?
Yeah, with the gopis?
Yeah, I think this was done by Muralidhar.
That's what I was thinking. I wasn't sure.
I think he did this one too. He also did this painting. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks like Muralidhar.
They're two different paintings. Yeah, actually, you see his name is on the bottom right. Muralidhar. Yeah. Very beautiful, aren't they?
Yeah, he's one of my all-time favorite artists.
Definitely empowered to represent Krishna. To see, people are painting their faces with makeup, trying to become attractive in the mature world. And he has the opportunity to paint the face of Krishna so that we can all see it. With great mercy. Amazing. This is the empowerment of Srila Prabhupada. Give us such mercy. Achyutananda, did you want to know something about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prayer or something?
What is the first line of that song?
Amar Saman Hina Nahi. You know that song?
No.
Yeah, it's from, what's it called? It's
The Kalpatan.
Yeah, it's the third branch. So that was part one. Yeah.
I like Moses in the mountain, and then Krishna with Govardhan.
Yeah.
Very terrific. One God over the mountain, one God under.
Yeah, I like that because it actually
He can switch.
It kind of shows how, it relates to that one I showed with we see the mountain. But what happened? Moses got instructions, and these are the instructions that are given to us, so that we can actually perfect our lives. And it was shown in this particular thing where
you can say to Christians and Jewish audience, Moses didn't bring down the 10 suggestions. And you always get it You always get a chuckle from them.
They weren't optional.
But in Gita, at the end, Krishna tells Arjuna, now deliberate over this and make up your own mind. So the whole thing is a suggestion. He's not forcing.
Exactly.
But
Yeah, that's true. But,
that's a big difference.
Vimrashaita Sheshena Yatech Jasita Takuru. Meditate upon it, and then do what you want.
Thank you.
Guy. So here we are. We're in this drop. So we're going to have. Hopefully, we change our viewpoint of the world today. I didn't want to bring in too much disasters, but we brought in some ideas and how to look at these things anyway.
Now it's so late. When did the meeting start? Because I came in, someone was on the phone with me, and it's 12:30. We don't usually go this late. Is it all right?
Yeah, it started on time, I think.
All right.
But we just kind of went overboard. Sorry.
That's okay, because sometimes I'm
good.
just worried about the policy, because sometimes if it's 10 after, Ramananda says, we're over time.
Yeah, sorry.
You are on the meeting.
And I say, let's go on another hour.
Yeah,
Gauda has some special Shakti with Ramananda.
it's merciful to me. It's very kind.
Does this involve some monetary exchange?
So it's just, he's kind to his little brother.
It's a little bribe. What is it?
Well, he was just here in LA. Maybe he was happy because I approached him and said hi. Did you have a good time while you're here, Ramananda?
Tell you the truth, I'm very glad to be back here in Hawaii.
Oh, okay. Well, we're glad you're happy. And we got your association. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you for your patience. And
I would just like to say thank you for a very applicable relative class. It's everything in your class I can put to use today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to try to do it myself. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Okay.
great visuals.
Excellent. Great class, Prabhu.
Thank you. I'll go to you, Prabhupada, or go to you, Bhagavatam.
And we look forward to seeing you back here in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Gauda Prabhu. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.